Proposal in Texas would allow tenants to terminate their lease if their utilities are turned off for more than 48 hours. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News.
Adam Sadovsky is reading over House Bill 1173,
right to vacate and avoid liability.
the legislation that would let renters terminate their lease if there's an outage for more than 48 hours.
Essential utility means electricity, natural gas, or water.
To him, it doesn't make sense.
This is absolutely insane.
The landlord rents 2 properties in Austin, including this home, which he used to live in.
Natural gas is right here.
This home lost power in the most recent ice storm, but not in 2021.
We ended up sleeping in a tent because it was so cold.
Sadovsky wasn't so lucky.
I went out at my own home for 2.5 days that time, and then over 3 days this time.
Sadovsky says these outages are out of landlords' hands, and 48 hours is not enough notice.
Why should it be the landlord's burden to shoulder that?
All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of Texas. Now, every once in a while, I do find some very anti-landlord laws that are trying to be passed in the state of Texas. Texas is a big place, okay? And it's got some very left-leaning cities in it, you know, with very more progressive populations, okay? And I'm talking about like Austin, I'm talking about parts of Dallas, Houston, etc. And they do not like landlords. They don't like property rights, but fortunately, the state overall is very landlord friendly, and they kind of keep these places in check. So a politician up there has proposed a law that would allow tenants to terminate their lease if their utilities are turned off for 48 hours. And, you know, I was trying to figure out, well, what is the reason that you would need that sort of law? Well, what they wanted to do is they said, oh, well, if there's a natural disaster and a tenant loses power or loses water, then they want the tenant to be able to just, you know, terminate their lease and go find somewhere else to live relatively easily. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. 2 days? 2 days? I mean, I've lived in a house in a house I own, and there was a bad winter storm. And guess what? Power was out for 3 days in that situation. So, you know, it's not like you're going to immediately need to go find somewhere to live. And it's not the landlord's fault if a natural disaster causes the power to be terminated. You know what? The best thing would be to say, okay, if there's a natural disaster, an apartment building becomes damaged to the point where, you know, they can't get the utilities back on and it's unlivable, they should allow the landlord to do a eviction, you know, an immediate eviction on the tenant to be able to get them out of there and then terminate the lease that way. That would give the power back to the landlord, the property owner, the one who really needs the power, and it can make the decision. If the power is going to be repaired within a few days, but, you know, it takes longer than 48 hours, that's no reason for the tenant to be able to terminate the lease and then get the heck out of there and screw the landlord over. But that's exactly what they're trying to do there. So yeah, this law doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but as we go through the article, you know, maybe it'll clarify a few things, all right? So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think of this law, okay? Do you think it's a good idea to allow tenants to terminate their lease if there's like a power outage or outage of water after just 2 days? Okay, just 2 days, right? That's all the time that's allowed to permit the tenant to be able to terminate their lease. What a joke. Anyway, let's get into this article and see what it says. It's coming from SpectrumLocalNews.com, and it says, landlords fight bill to give renters right to terminate leases because of utility outages. Yeah, and like I said, this is coming out of Texas, so let's get into it. Giving power to renters when the power is out is the goal of a bill in the Texas legislature. If passed, the bill would allow renters more rights in the event of a utility outage. Spectrum News One Texas spoke with renters, tenant rights advocates, and housing nonprofits who say this legislation will help balance the power between landlords and tenants. Texas is widely known as a landlord-friendly state, while tenants' rights are much weaker. Even so, landlords say that this bill is not only unfair, it's unhelpful. An act pertaining to a tenant's right to terminate a residential lease, Adam Sadovsky said, reading over House Bill 1173, right to vacate and avoid liability. Yeah, and these tenant right advocates, they already know the deal. Texas is a landlord-friendly state. At least I consider it one. Most landlords consider it one. You know, they're very friendly to landlords. They're very friendly to developers out there. And that is the reason why so many people are moving there, because they're able to keep housing affordable because they don't overregulate property, okay? They don't tread on people's property rights. So people continue to build, and people want to move there because they have these rights. You know, a lot of states could learn from what they're doing there in Texas, because that is really what attracts people to a state. It's not just the weather, you know, like Texas doesn't have the best weather by any means. Yeah, it's a warmer climate, but it's super duper humid down there. It's not just the beaches, you know. And when I'm talking about weather, beaches, etc., you know, I'm talking about California, right? You think that a lot of people would move to California if they had more housing available? Yeah. Do you think a lot more people would move to California if the housing was affordable out there? Yeah. Do you think a lot more people would move to California if there was just way less taxes, way less regulation? Oh, yeah. I think people and businesses right now are leaving California because of all of the things that they've implemented, because they sat there and they thought, oh, well, we offer so much, you know, these people will never leave. Well, they were wrong. They were dead wrong. And people, they vote with their feet. They go where they're treated best. So if California says, hey, we're going to tax the heck out of these people, housing is going to be super expensive, you know, there's going to be homeless people running around everywhere, there's a ton of crime, well, guess what? Those people are going to go to Texas. And, you know, Texas is getting an influx of these people from out of state. And guess what? They're bringing a lot of their very far left-leaning progressive ideas with them. And this is one of those ridiculous ideas. The legislation would let renters terminate their lease if there is an outage of electricity, natural gas, or water for more than 48 hours. This is absolutely insane, Sadovsky exclaimed. To him, it doesn't make any sense. The landlord has been renting in Austin since 2011. He doesn't own big apartment complexes, just 2 houses. One of the houses lost power in the most recent ice storm, but not in 2021. Sadovsky wasn't so lucky. We ended up sleeping in a tent because it was so cold, he said. The power went out at my own home for 2.5 days at that time, 3.5 this time. Sadovsky says these outages are out of landlords' hands, and 48 hours is not enough notice. And that is exactly what I'm saying. If your power, you know, I don't agree with the law or the proposal at all, allowing the tenant to be able to terminate the lease. My opinion is that if the landlord, you know, the landlord should be given the right to terminate the lease if a natural disaster causes a power outage, you know, and even then, the landlord, in order, I believe strongly in contract rights, right? So the tenant and the landlord made an agreement, so it should be that the property, you know, is either beyond the point of repairing within a reasonable time period. And to me, a reasonable time period could be a week or longer. It could be a couple of weeks, right? So if it takes a couple of weeks because, you know, there's such a backlog in order to get the water running again, then yeah, we get the water fixed, and then you just move right back into your unit. There should be no reason why you should, you know, be moving away and screwing the lease up, or I just don't understand this law. I don't understand why they are trying to put this power into the tenant's hands when they don't need it. In 2021, numerous apartments, low-income, and public housing properties issued lease termination and evictions because of storm damage and outages. Texas State Representative Terry Meza, Democrat from Irving, says that's why she introduced HB 1173. If the landlords can say to the tenant, you have to leave because we need to fix utilities, then the tenants can say, "I need to leave," Representative Meza said. So it sounds like they're trying to make it, kind of the opposite. Like they were like, "Oh well, what I said, where the landlords had the power to evict due to these problems, right, is already in place within Texas, right?" And they don't like that. They don't like the fact that the landlord has the power. So they're trying to say, "Oh well, we need to give this power to the tenants. We need to make sure the tenants can leave whenever the heck they want to. If the landlord can evict you whenever they want to." Like, first of all, right, this was caused by a natural disaster. So this isn't the fault of the landlord or the tenant. If the landlord needs to make repairs to make the place livable again, and the tenant isn't able to go back in there, that's one thing. But if the place can be like, if the power is going to be back on in 2.5 days, there's no reason for the tenant to have any ability to terminate the lease. So yeah, stupid law. I don't like it. I hope that it doesn't pass. It probably won't. Okay. Keep in mind, this is still Texas. It's still a very landlord friendly place. It still has strong property rights, and it's just a proposal right now. But look out for this sort of thing because, hey, you never know what could happen.